My focus today will be to scare the living shit out of you about this tidal wave of remote work, and to set you up nicely for my colleague from Airbnb to tell you in a little bit more of a considered way how it can be done, because we're way off out on the left wing. So if you're not scared by what we're doing, then I haven't done my job properly. And I'll focus in on primarily on what I would refer to as the employer benefits. So a quick little thing on the background. I spent most of my working career in the US. I moved over there in 1992. Those of us of that generation will remember a time period of 20% unemployment, where 50% of people coming out of college, even with master's degrees, were emigrating, where whole classes emigrated. And that was the life that we all faced in 1992. I moved to the States and I worked there for 20 years, like I said, and I ended up working for a wonderful company called Virgin Atlantic Airways. And while at Virgin Atlantic, I was lucky enough to get to the role of VP of Customer Services. And one of the challenges that we had post 9/11 was, how do we radically change the cost structure of the organization? And the largest cost we had in customer service was a people-related cost and a process-related cost. And the easiest way to have a look at that, not the easiest way, one of the better ways to look at that was to really change the paradigm of how we looked at it. So we actually embraced a remote working culture in 2002. And just to scare the crap out of you even more, this was way before broadband. This was in dial-up days, and we were able to do it in dial-up. So anybody who goes on about the national broadband plan, you can't do without the national broadband plan, bullshit. It can be done. It was done 16, 17 years ago, and it definitely can be done. I then worked for a company called Arise for a couple of years, who are a remote-based service provider. And while I was there, I managed bits of business for the clients. Some of the clients included Apple, Disney, Carnival Cruise Line, Home Depot, AT&T, Virgin Atlantic, Virgin America. I mean, really interesting major brands, all of whom were doing remote. And just a frame of reference, this is back in 2006, 7, 8, 9. So, this is 10, 12 years ago. We're not talking about something new. I then joined Apple in 2010 full-time and moved back to Ireland. I'm from Cork originally. And you'll notice the voice going up and down every now and then that give away the Cork, a little bit of Cork. But came back in 2010 to Apple to run their contact center. And in my time at Apple, I literally did almost nothing on the remote working. 2 years ago, I got a phone call from Shopify, and they had me at sentence 2 when they mentioned that they were a remote-based company. So that's a little bit about my background. So what are we doing with Shopify? We started 4 years ago in Ireland, and we decided to put a 50-person group together in Ireland and see how it goes. And it was referred to as the Irish experiment. Well, that experiment is now about 6, 7 times the size. In less than 4 years. I think it's June of this year where we hit 4 years. And the one scary thing is we are fully remote. We have no office. I'm just going to say that again. We have no office. So what does that mean? An employee from Shopify is applying for a mortgage, and they go into the bank. And one of the forms says, "What's your employer's address?" That's a problem, because our address is care of the IDA, Murview Technology Park, Galway. Now, as the person who heads up Shopify in Ireland, I have never seen a single piece of mail in 2 years. So if somebody is sending anything to there, I'm sorry for the poor IDA folks up there, but I've never seen any mail. I hope they're burning them, but nothing's ever happened. So it just shows a bullshit process that exists out there, that there are people out there who will actually put that up there as a way to say we can't really do it because we have to have an address. But one of the challenges when you have an address at an office is you have a receptionist, you have a water cooler, you have all of these costs that bring things in, and there's intangible costs that are brought in as well, which are the toxins that actually kind of damage the fabric of companies. It's not perfect, but the setup for me is I will scare the crap out of you, and Therese will actually tell you how it can be done in incremental parts. So we've grown from basing 50 people in Galway, first of all, a couple of years ago, almost 4 years ago, to about a year later, we were in about 6 counties, almost all on the West Coast. on the western seaboard, should I say, literally from Clare up to Donegal. We were concentrated there. And about a year ago, we ripped off the Band-Aid and we said in one of our job ads, we just said, just simple words, and not just Galway anymore. Boom. We lit up the country like a Christmas tree, and we're in all 26 counties now. And it literally took about 4 or 5 months for us to go from 7 counties to 26 counties. That to me says that not only have we passed the inflection point, but there's an insatiable appetite for remote work. And we now handle multiple roles and we're growing. I don't see any reason why that 300 can't have a 1 in front of it, and we shouldn't be 1,300 people in a couple of years if the company continues to grow and we have that need, because there is no restriction, none whatsoever. The only restriction is us having the guts and having the management team to do it. So I'm going to use the term work from home, and it's a proxy for remote work. And it's a really interesting thing. It's a challenge. It's something that I battle with at home with my wife on a regular basis, because I try to tell her that, like, she's like, you're here. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm actually physically here, but I'm not available. I work from home, that's my office, and I'm just simply not available. And it's a real interesting challenge for everybody to get a hold of. You're not dossing around, you're not, you're actually working. So I work in my attic, in my cave, and when I'm there, I don't come out. And it's a concept that if you haven't done a full on, let's say a full work week working from home, you probably won't get it, and you probably don't get it. And I would advocate and encourage every one of you to do that at some stage over the course of the next 6 months, so you kind of get an understanding as to what it's like. If you don't have a half day where you feel completely isolated, alone, and the little demon on your shoulder is going, this is the greatest piece of shit ever. If you don't have that half day, then you're not doing it properly, because that's part of the whole experience. So what do people actually think working from home is? I'm going to give you one of the classic missteps. This was February 2013. A lady called Marissa Mayer joined Yahoo. I think it was in 2012. She joined Yahoo, much ballyhooed as the CEO of Yahoo. Yahoo had this policy in place for a number of years where in the Bay Area, they allowed their employees to work from home. And with a lot of bunting and ballyhoo, in February 2013, Marissa Mayer issued an edict that they were missing out on everything, and everybody needs to be back in the office, and yada, yada, yada. And you can read it here. Look, some of the best decisions and insights come from hallway and cafeteria discussions. Speed and quality are often sacrificed when we work from home. Those of us who work from home, and those of us who espouse the whole theory of working from home, will tell you there's not a single shred of data behind that. That's an emotional bleating from a company that was that was probably in trouble. And if you go forward, maybe, or go back in time with Yahoo, there was a couple of interesting things happened. Sorry, I'm just not able to scroll down here. 1 second now. In 2007, 2008, Microsoft made an unsolicited offer of $45 billion for Yahoo. Yahoo ended up selling about 3 years after Marissa Mayer issued this edict. Yahoo sold for 1/10 of that price. They sold for about $4.83 billion. And of that $4.83 billion, almost every penny of it was down to the fact that they'd made an investment in a Chinese company called Alibaba, which meant that Yahoo was absolutely worthless. I am not for 1 second equating a poor decision regarding work from home with the fact that the company lost a lot of value, but it's kind of an interesting observation all the same. Okay, so work from home, what is it? If I could actually, 1 second now. Okay, so what actually is it? It conjures up two images for people working from home. It's the opportunity to take a laptop, go sit on the beach, sand between the toes, look at the beautiful horizon, and just take it nice and easy, a drink with an umbrella in it. For some people look at it and they go, it's a substitute for childcare or a substitute for elder care or pet care. It's actually none of the above. What it really is finding a place where you're, no, it's not an IKEA ad, it's finding a place where you're comfortable, where you're in that Zen area where you can actually get work done. Just speaking very personally about it, this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I have, my mother has a house down in anybody who knows West Cork in Mizenhead, way down the bottom corner of the country. And I had an opportunity to go there for 3 days this week, just me and the dog. I think we were sent there by She Who Must Be Obeyed, just to get a bit of peace and quiet. And I had 3 days of just, I would call it personal work boot camp. And it's the most amazing thing when you find that general kind of, that flow of work. That's what working from home is for most of the people. You remove the distractions, you're in your home environment, and you're essentially the best version of yourself. So talk a little bit about some of the employer benefits. The one thing I would encourage you all to do, because I'm looking at I'm sorry for judging here now, but I'm going to assume that the majority of people in the audience are Gen X / Gen Y folks. So I'm going to assume kind of the 1960s and 70s would be the predominant birth years, okay? I may be being very kind to some people. I may be insulting a few other people. Okay, I'm just talking about the general mass. I won't look at anybody because you're just trying to make me laugh about it. And the problem for us is that there's a significant generational change happening. Now, every generation. Second out. Sorry. Okay. Every time there's a generational change, there's an opportunity to lean in and look at what the next generation is doing. And unfortunately, the economic power sits with my generation. And every one of us of that age group is, to a certain extent, is a grumpy old shit. Okay, and we like no change. We would much prefer to tell you that the status quo is fine, and we'll tell you what's not working. But the opportunity is there for us to actually lean in to this incredibly interesting group, the millennials. And this would be variously described as the folks born between 1977 and 1995. So what are they, between 24 and 42 now? And this is a group of people who've changed the paradigm for us as employers, because this is a group of people who are telling us by their actions that they kind of have the power now. And if you look in Ireland with the way the unemployment rate is, or should I say the employment rate is being so high, they're actually right. And they're voting with their feet. And they are telling us that they want something different to what my generation held dear, which was, I'll tell you where the place of work is, and you then make the effort to come there. And what we're hearing time and time again is that these folks don't want that. They want to tell you, they'll tell you where they're living, and if you can get the work to them, great. And my generation, the majority of us in the room, need to lean into that and not look back and not be the Waldorf and Stadler grumpy old shits looking for people to go back in time. We need to move forward in time. This is a generation, I'm going to refer to them as the YouTube generation. So I was talking to my son last night. He's 17. He's about just heading into his leaving cert. And I said to him, when you're looking for information, where do you go? He said, well, duh. I go out to Google and I asked the question. I said, well, when you want to find out how to do something, and he looked at me with exasperation and said, I go into Google, find out the information, and because Google owns YouTube, there's a how-to video there. And I said, so like, tell me 3, 4, 5 things that you've used YouTube for to work out how to do. Everything from learning to play the guitar, how to do a Rubik's Cube. He went through a whole range of things, and I just sat there, I was scratching my head going, oh Lord, this is something that my generation, we just didn't do. So what's actually happening is these people are consuming data in an incredibly different way. How that's impacting the education system, particularly, and I just randomly chose two in Ireland and one worldwide provider here. How that's changing is that I have like I said, somebody doing the leaving cert, I have somebody doing the junior cert. Both of those are getting online grinds in French from a French woman who lives in Connemara. Now, that didn't happen 10 years ago because the technology wasn't in place, but it's happening now. And that's just at the cutting edge of it. Imagine what's going to happen with schooling. Imagine what's going to happen with the education industry over time. Anybody who's got a teenager who's into science and mathematics, your child is probably telling you about the Khan Academy, an incredibly unbelievable force of nature in the education space. It's changing. And if we don't know any of these, I'm just putting it out there just to piss you off and challenge you to go look at these things, because it'll shape the way that you're going to need to think for the next 5 years. So the way these folks are consuming information and educating themselves has changed, and changed radically. This is a group of people, and to summarize my point in generational change, they've got work-life balance down far more than we ever had. There's no more of this corporate slavery bullshit going on. It's a lot more of a case of, I'll tell you where I live, and you get the work to me, as opposed to the other way around. So that's the generational change. The second part of it is talent war. Every one of us as an employer is looking for that first mover advantage. How are we going to get ahead of everybody else? Because at the end of it, we're all commercial. We're all trying to beat our competitor, and we're trying to get one up on them. And we're all looking for that diverse pool of people. And we have to change the way we think about it. We have to change the way that we're approaching them. And I think the critical thing is, this is a group of people who are the largest majority of the employee base. They don't want anything to do with how we set ourselves up in the 80s and 90s with the way we looked at the workforce. I cannot see my children, my teenagers, wanting to go work in a cubicle in a large office. Now, mind you, they're exposed to me talking, rabbiting on, bullshitting nonstop about remote work, so they have a completely jaundiced and very unbalanced view, but that's fine. But they are so, even in talking with their friends, like this year alone, I've been approached, I think 4 times, 4 different schools around Ireland, different people have called me to do transition year projects and are looking for information about remote work. This is 15-year-olds, okay? They're already conscious of this. They're already making choices about this. And we need to actually address and embrace that, or else that talent war is lost. One area is in employee retention. Here's one of the scariest stats, and this is a great thing. We are don't tell anybody, we're in a really quiet, nice boom period at the moment. We don't like talking about it because we absolutely made a balls of it the first time around. Okay, but we're now at about a 5% unemployment rate and rapidly dropping. That renders this a significant challenge for us, because we actually have to find a way to retain those people. And what we're finding is that the most attractive way to retain folks is to take friction out of their worlds. And the biggest point of friction that we're seeing is commuting and time. And I use those slightly, to me, they're very slightly different. The whole nature of commuting is actually a very frictionful and frictioned process every day. And then there's the amount of time, whether it be whether you're commuting from Tullamore to Dublin. I mean, look, I'll give you a crazy example. Like I said, I worked at Apple in Cork. While I was there were people on my team who commuted from Newport, County Tipperary. We had 2 people from Clare. We had a guy who came from Kilkenny City every single day to Cork. Like, that's just not right. It's not healthy, when all of those jobs could actually have been beamed back or shipped back for those folks to work from home. And that's the friction that we need to take out of the whole process if we're going to actually retain employees. Talk a little bit about cost. If I said to you as an employer, I'm going to reduce your cost, I'm going to drive your productivity up, I'm going to absolutely and utterly drop your attrition rate lower than you've ever seen it before. Oh, and by the way, there's going to be a great green card to play, environmental friendly card. Would you be interested? We know the answer for every single person, every single employer out there would be hell yes. Well, there's a great example, and it's probably the largest statistical example to prove this, and it's a study that's cited on a regular basis, and it's a company called C-Trip. So let me tell you a little bit about C-Trip. C-Trip is a very large Chinese travel company, 16,000 employees, and the CEO, his name is James Lang, and James was attending an executive ed course in Stanford University, and the professor in Stanford was a guy called Nicholas Bloom, and James was having this huge problem in China where their attrition rate was, I think, somewhere between 50 and 60%. And his real estate costs of hiring people, his real estate cost of housing these people was enormous. So he went to the professor in this exec ed course and said, I'd be willing to run a trial if you help me do it. And the two of them concocted a trial as part of his study for his executive MBA. And they took 500 people. Actually, sorry, they took 1,000 people and they broke them into two cohorts. They had 500 people, and so very like cohorts. They had 500 people work from home and 500 people work in the office, and they studied them for 2 years. And what they actually found was, over that 2-year period, they were saving 2,000 per year per employee, just in facility costs. 13.5% productivity boost, okay? That's 5.5 hours a week, assuming you're working a 40-hour week. In China, they were working a little bit more, but westernize that for a second. That's 5.5 hours extra a week. Attrition rate halved. And they also had that green card. Anybody who's ever been to China will know how wonderful the air quality is. So anything that would actually improve that would be how terrible it is. I'm being sarcastic. So there was a really important play. And this is the one study that gets cited the most. With every study, you actually have to also embrace the one kind of slight challenge with it. And I mentioned this earlier on, every single person who's ever worked remote and fully remote comes across the concept of isolation. So being able to handle that isolation and having a bunch of mitigating circumstances and deflection techniques on how to handle isolation is a crucially important thing. I'm not going to go into it today. We can talk about it later over coffee or whatever. So, productivity. I'm going to cite another study as well, because we would all, as employers, be perfectly happy if somebody said, okay, I can bring in a group of people who are going to be more productive, who are going to get shit done faster. They're going to get more shit done. They're going to get shit done faster, and they're going to be really good at working as teams. So if I told any prospective employer that, they would bite my arm off. Well, interestingly enough, Cisco did a study in, I think it was 2009. 2009. 83% of the people who participated in the study, and these were remote workers, said that their ability to communicate and collaborate was the same or higher. Those of us who are now fully immersed and involved in the remote world will tell you that, and this sounds like rubbish, but it's so true. When you spend your day, like your work day, with 6 or 7 hours of video conference calls, it takes literally a week to get fully involved and fully, professionalized in the world of being able to interact on video. And once you do, you actually get to know a hell of a lot more about people. And I know there's probably 50% of the people out there like, yeah, it's different from meeting somebody in real life. Yes, it is. But it doesn't mean it's different wrong. There's aspects of it that are different right. I routinely talk to our folks at Shopify 6, 8, 10 weeks after they've joined the company, when they're kind of coming out of our training program. And almost to a man and woman, they will tell you and the line is, it happens with every single training cohort. Somebody says something along the lines of, I know more about this group of people that I've been doing online training with for the last 6 weeks. I know more about them than I ever did about the colleague that I sat beside in an office for 10 years. Now, if you've sat in an office for 10 years beside somebody, you'll say you know everything about them. I've lived this experience for the last couple of years, and I'll tell you what, I genuinely know more about the people and care more about the people that I'm involved with in a virtual world. And I never thought I'd ever say that, but it is so true. And the ability to because I have to up my communication style and I have to up my collaboration style, because I can't assume that somebody will know from a nod and a wink and all that crap that we Irish people love to do, and kind of telling things sort of like, kind of different way. When you're actually working with somebody online and you actually have to communicate in a proper format and be very deliberate about that communication, it's amazing how that directness and that sort of style of communication works. So almost 70% of people said that they were more productive when working remote. Like I said, I was down in West Cork for a couple of days this week. I'd say I did the equivalent of a full week's work in my normal home office in Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because I had zero distractions. I was completely in a different planet. In terms of timeliness, and I'm going to very unfairly compare Shopify and Apple for a second, because they're my most recent frame of reference. The timeliness of project delivery is light years ahead in the online world, because all excuses are gone. The dog can't eat your homework. There's a ton of things that you can't do, or that you can't come up with for a reason for not doing it, because we have that sort of always on, always available. We have a whole toolkit. We have collaboration tools. There are tons of people that can help you. There's really almost no reason. And what you find is that people don't find the reasons not to do it. They find the reasons to get something done. And that actually drives timeliness and delivery of projects. There's also this incredibly important point, which is the intrinsic and very hard to calculate value of trust. And I'm going to refer to this as kind of the all-in theory. So that trust drives another layer of personal productivity. So I'm going to give you an example. Joe works for Facebook in Dublin, but Joe's actually from Carrick and Shannon. And he's desperately trying to get to a place where he can actually take his job and actually go back to the Hive down in Carrick and actually work from the co-working space down there. But so eventually when Facebook says, great, Joe, we'll allow you to go work from home, because they're afraid that Joe's a flight risk. So Joe will go and work in Carrick. What's going to happen then is Joe has left the safety net that exists in Dublin, because in Dublin, if Joe wants to move to another company, or if Facebook tires of Joe, Joe tires of Facebook, there are a myriad of other companies that Joe can apply to and go work in. So now Joe's down in Carrick. He's all in, pretty much in Carrick. There's really not much of a choice. So from a personal perspective, Joe is so all in, all his chips are on red, and he's going to make it work. And I see this happen time and time and time again. I see folks coming into Shopify, they kind of start in the Dublin area, or they start in Galway or Cork. The minute they get comfortable and they know that they can go wherever they want, guess where they're going? They're going to live in Tramore, they're going to live in Lahinch, they're going to live in Strandhill, they're going back up to Donegal. They're going to where they feel most comfortable. And when they're there, they're going to make it work, because you know what? The downside of it not working is quite draconian for them. So that personal productivity is automatically upped because they're all in. And if I told you as an employer, and if you're talking to an employer, you're going to have people they're all in. And when you have everybody who's all in, you have an incredible team. Absolutely incredible team. And one of the reasons why this frightens the crap out of most of them, they don't ever want to go back to that again, because this is a generation that gets this whole concept of work-life balance, way more so than we did. It was referenced earlier on, the Beast from the East. I think which one was it? Ophelia was late 2017 and Emma was March of last year. Very interesting point to make about those two storms. Absolutely brought the country to a halt. Absolutely and utterly, as we know, our wonderful friend Teresa. But what we found at Shopify, this amazing thing was, we actually had the highest we got to was 110% attendance rate. Like, what? He's full of shit, all right? We actually had, because those people who were looking to go on holidays were like, hang on, they were calling up saying, look, I can't fly, I'm not allowed to drive, we can't go out. Is it okay? I'm supposed to take vacation, can I work today? Yeah, great, knock yourself out. So we actually had a higher attendance rate than we've ever had on the 5, we shut down for 1 day for one of them and 3 for the other, I think. Like, when I say we, the country shut down. We were above 100% every single one of those days. Now, if that's not resilience, and we're running a worldwide business, so to be honest with you, the rest of the world doesn't give a crap about the fact that there's a little old bit of wind coming in off the coast. They don't care, all right? We're expected to be on. So we actually were better off, believe it or not, from a resilience perspective, we were actually better off in times of trouble. And that's an incredibly important thing for any employer to think about. So, just going to summarize quickly, because I'm sure I've gone way over time. Generational change, talent pool, cost, productivity, and resilience. And if you can actually improve every single one of those, you're in great shape. Thank you very much for your time. If you want to reach out, I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out on Twitter, though none of you are on social media at the moment. You're all very good because you behave. You can reach me on email, john.riordan@shopify.com. And then there's also a podcast I did a couple of weeks ago, which goes into a lot more detail on some of this. It's about an hour long that I did with a crowd called Yonder. We're a US-based company. They're totally focused on all things remote. And I hope today that I've given you maybe an opportunity to hear a viewpoint as to why some companies are willing to do it. And I hope it empowers some of you who have the opportunity to talk to other people and influence other people, that working remote is something that's really important. I'm going to leave you with one other point, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial on this one. Our friends in the IDA, who've done a phenomenal job for us as a country, an incredible job. And one of the recent announcements was bringing 1,500 people in Salesforce, for Salesforce.com, building a tower in Dublin, Salesforce Tower and all that kind of stuff. Does Dublin need another 1,500 people? Okay? What's going to happen is will Dublin be able to absorb that? Yes, it will. But what it's going to do, it's going to push out at the bottom end. And we're seeing it all. Any of us who are involved in some charitable organizations are seeing that problem happen. And I would call it the employed homeless. And it's not actually homeless, it's the employed people who are being pushed further and further out. And they're getting to a point where something's going to give. And the real opportunity for us as a country, putting on the big ass green jersey here for a second, is we actually have a little bit of an employment problem. And it's that we have tons of towns around the country that could massively benefit from 2 people, 4 people, 6 people coming back into that town. It's the difference between the post office closing. It's a difference between the bank closing down the branch. It's the difference of another teacher being hired in the school. So we actually do have a little bit of an employment problem. It's just we have essentially a job dislocation. One of the best ways to relocate those jobs is to take initiative and encourage people who already have jobs here to head west, head south, head east. Basically, get the hell out of the cities. Take the job that you already have. The company's not going to take them away, but encourage companies to move jobs away from the cities to free up space. And then the idea, let's bring all in the 1,500 people, the Google are going to open up a new operation, and there's literally, the idea has a pipeline of thousands and thousands of jobs. I think we as a body need to actually free up space for the great work they're doing. Thank you very much.